Welcome back to another episode of Cleats Off the Couch. We've been talking one team, predicted season from each division in the NFL, and we made our way last episode into the NFC for the first four teams. We're on team 2 in that run. Last episode, the Minnesota Vikings were on the agenda. Was an interesting time trying to siphon through the thought of what this season will look like for them. And it gets better. Now we come to the Washington Commanders. Now every single one is difficult. Let's be real. Making any kind of prediction is a difficult play. But Carson Wentz, in and of himself, is a story. And that's part of the issue. I think Carson Wentz had a decent year last year. I know there were some reports that came out about his leadership capabilities in the locker room, and those were some things that affected leadership, sending him off, getting rid of him from Indianapolis. I think a lot of people were just really irritated of that last game. I don't think people give enough credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars defense and to the necessary actions of the entire team that is the Indianapolis Colts, not just one player. We're in such a quarterback-centric league nowadays that people forget about how team-centric football is. And it annoys me at times, in case you can't tell in my voice right now. But Carson Wentz, he's had some decent seasons in the NFL, and I think last year he had a decent year. And he did what he did last season. I'm really curious. I want to see what his stats actually looked like. But last season, he didn't have a true number one receiver in Indianapolis. And they still just missed the playoffs. And the other thing people don't remember is Jacksonville had the worst coach in the history of the NFL in Urban Meyer. And in those last couple of games, they didn't have Urban Meyer anymore. And the team that Jacksonville had came to life, was shown to us. And I think they were better than people gave them credit to be. Not great, don't get me wrong, but I just think people just want to blame the quarterback whenever they get the opportunity to. Yeah, last year, over 3,500 yards, 27 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions, a 94.6 rating. I think that's his third best of his career. 2018 was his best year with the Eagles, 2017 with the Eagles, and then last year with the Colts, and then 2019 with the Eagles. So he had a good season. And again, that was without a number one receiver. They had to rely on the run, which when you have Jonathan Taylor and you have Nyheim Hines, I think I butchered his name, but you have the run depth that they have. You're going to be fine throwing the ball when you need to. And that's the case of what happened. And if you think about it, he only threw 7 interceptions last year. And I know, was it 3 or 4? 3, I think, came in that final game against the Jags defense. So to say, looking at the entirety of his season, only throwing 4 interceptions, and then 3 in the last game, to me, it doesn't line up logically to say it was all that one guy. It was all that one guy. All year, he's been in a certain way. He's played a certain way. But then this one game, I know I'm going off on a Carson Wentz tangent here, but it's important for us to try and think through how the Commanders are going to do to understand how Carson Wentz is going to do. I mean, they just re-signed Scary Terry, so they're going to have Terry McLaurin running wild. That front 7 on the defense, always looking good. So the Commanders, I've done the run through with the predictions on TikTok Live, and I came to a certain place. I don't like to reveal it this early on, but I came to a certain place, and I think I may have undershot them, but we'll see. We'll see. The Commanders, first of all, they're in the NFC East. The NFC East tends to be a muddy water puddle. It just tends to be a muddy pothole, and anybody can do anything. It's been that way for years. And now the interesting thing that we're going to see, is we're going to see a good start to the season for Washington, which is going to be interesting because I don't think that Washington hasn't seen that. I don't think they've even seen a 2-0 start since like 2011. I don't think they've seen like a 4-0 start since like 2005. Like it's I'm not saying they'll go 4-0, but I'm looking at what they could potentially do, and it could surprise some people. And I know the NFC is not a deep division this year. But when you get to the wild card spots, you're going to have a lot of teams that are like 9-win teams that are fighting to get those wild card spots in the NFC just to get represented in the playoffs. We'll see if I think Washington can be in that fight with teams like last week talking about Minnesota, maybe some other teams like the Cardinals or the Cowboys. What? I don't want to get ahead of some of this, but more episodes coming soon. But Carson Wentz final game in Indy. Let's see if I can find what the stats were from that game to really understand. He went 17 of 29 for 185 yards and 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Wait a minute. What was I under the impression of? I was under the impression that Carson Wentz threw a bunch of interceptions in that game. But this right here shows the final tally was 26-11. The Colts lost. But it shows that Carson Wentz was 17 of 29, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Why did I think he had 3 interceptions? Where did that storyline come from? Am I misreading something? Jonathan Taylor had 15 carries for 77 yards, so they shut down the run. They just weren't able to do much of anything. And the Colts defense wasn't able to stop the Jaguars offense. Is what I must be misreading something, because this is right. Where did the story come from? Okay, he lost a fumble as well. He lost a fumble and he threw an interception. He was sacked 6 times. So the offensive line played like trash. The defense for the Colts didn't stop the Jaguars offense. So why all this hate towards Carson? Guys, I'm really confused. I was under the impression, I don't follow the Colts, I don't follow the Jaguars, so I didn't really care. I was under the impression from different storylines that he threw like 3 interceptions that final game. Earlier in the year against the Jaguars, he went 22 of 34 for only 180 yards, got sacked once. They won 23-17, so that was even a close game. Guys, I don't know where I got that information from. I don't know where I heard that from, honestly, anymore. But that was like the understood consensus, I thought, of what happened, and it's not at all. What now? Now I'm even more confused. Now I'm even more confused because, again, Carson Wentz is a solid quarterback, and what that shows me is it definitely wasn't his fault or completely his fault. He's a part of the team, so there's probably some passes. You know, he was 17 of 29, so he missed 12 passes. So maybe some choices there. He fumbled the ball once, probably on a sack. I'm willing to guess if he got sacked 6 times. So I don't know. I do not know. Anyway, let's move on from that. I do think Carson will have a solid season. Last year, Washington went 7-10. 7-10, ending 3rd in the NFC East, obviously missing the playoffs. And this year, I think they're going to finish 3rd in the division again, but not only 7 wins. So let's look here at the schedule. Starting off the year against Jacksonville, I think Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders will defend home in FedEx Field, opening the season 1-0 against Jacksonville. He'll get the revenge game. Is it revenge when obviously it wasn't just him? I don't know. I need more input. Tell me in the comments what you guys think. What happened with the car? Where did I get this news from? Why were people hating on Carson Wentz so much? I don't know. I didn't watch the game too because maybe there was some like 6 sacks. Maybe he just had terrible pocket awareness. I don't know. But usually 6 sacks. You've got. I mean, it's the Commanders. No. That was Jaguars. I mean, I'm curious to see how many sacks of those were Josh Allen, the young guy, off the end in Jacksonville. But Jacksonville, I think Commanders will get a win. Their front 7 on defense, excellent. Shoring up some things on offense, upgrading quarterback, tying down Terry McLaurin. I think they're going to have a solid year. starting out with a 1-0 win. And then they travel to Detroit. Detroit will be, again, they'll have surprise wins, exciting wins. I think Washington can go into Detroit and get the win. Will they is the question. I'm I'm going to give them the 2-0 start. I'm going to give them 2-0, winning in Detroit, and then coming home to play Philadelphia. And you know what the storylines are going to be. Carson playing his home team, et cetera, but they're going to be in FedEx Field. It's not going to carry the same. I think Philadelphia gets the win. They start off 2-1, and then they travel to Jerry Dome. They travel to the Dallas Cowboys, in which I'm going to give a win, a surprise win over the Dallas Cowboys in AT&T. The Dallas Cowboys play better on the road than they do at home ever since Jerry Dome was built. I think they're only like 500 overall when it comes to home games. But Washington comes in, gets a win, goes to 3-1, and then they go back home to play Tennessee. Going to be a tough game. They're going to match up well, actually, I think. I think Tennessee will get the win on the road. It's going to be interesting because I believe the front seven in Washington can shut down Derrick Henry. And if they shut down Derrick Henry, there's no more A.J. Brown. I think that could very well limit Tennessee. Tennessee's defense actually wasn't that great, right? I don't think they were that great that last year. I think they're only going to be about middle of the line this year. I'm flipping my answer. I think Washington gets the win. I think Washington gets the win, guys. I really do. So what does that make them? 4-1? Wow, 4-1, guys. And then traveling to Chicago. I think Chicago can surprise us a couple times. This is a short week. They're going to be in Soldier Field, Thursday night football. I don't know how well Carson has played on evening. Like last episode, I was able to remember a statistic I read somewhere about Kirk Cousins Monday night football games being like 1-8 or 1-9. So it's a pretty good bet that he'll lose on a Monday night football game. I don't know what that is with Carson Wentz. Chicago, I don't think is going to win a ton of games this year, but I do think they're going to have some flashes here and there. If Washington wins to Tennessee, I can see them going to Chicago and losing. If they lose at home to Tennessee, I can see them traveling to Chicago and winning. So because I gave the win over Tennessee, I'm going to give a surprise loss against Chicago. I see between two teams like that, especially those two bookended by Dallas and Green Bay and then Indianapolis. Yeah, so we're going to go 4-2. And again, this is about win totals. I may be off by what teams they're going to win, but getting a feel for how I think the team is going to play and how the teams they're going to play will play as well. So putting that all together, they go home, play Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers wins in FedEx Field. Doesn't matter. It's going to be 4-3, and then they're going to travel to Indianapolis, and I think back in Indianapolis, guys, I like the Colts. Matt Ryan, I think, will fit well to be the leader that they need to lead a very well-defined roster that is in Indianapolis. So I'm going to give the loss to Washington in Indianapolis, giving a couple game losing streak to make it 4-4. And then they're going to go home and play Minnesota. I forget who I had in the Minnesota prediction podcast winning, but I think I had Minnesota traveling to the East Coast and getting a loss. I'm still going to hold to that Washington win at home, especially if they go on like a 3-game losing streak. Minnesota's a team that they can win against. I'm going to give a win here to Washington, going 5-4. And then traveling to Philadelphia. Philadelphia, I think, is the NFC East team to win this year. A little bit of a sleeper Super Bowl pick for me in the NFC. Way too early for that. It's probably going to change in a week, let alone by the season. But win against Minnesota. I think they travel into Lincoln Financial, and Carson Wentz plays lights out. That's where the storyline, the return to Philly, the win will take place. Not in Washington with Philly coming in early in the season. Week 10, win over Philadelphia. I don't want to choose a split with Philly, but I really think that's going to happen. I really do. And the other thing that's going to be big is where are the injuries at by week 10. That's going to be a big play, especially with Philadelphia, especially with Philly. So win over Philly, that puts us at, what were we at? 5-4. Now we're at 6-4. travel to Houston, a win in Energy Stadium, putting them at 7-4, and then they head home and play Atlanta. And I think this may be a game that surprises, and Atlanta comes out with a win. I think this is one I've talked about. Atlanta I think, is one of those teams that will just surprise us at different points. And the NFL, every team is an NFL team. So there's going to be different losing squads that surprise at different times. I think Atlanta can do that. Some of the guys on defense will play well, especially in the secondary, I think. And then it's going to be interesting, though, to see how the quarterback situation is going to unfold. Cordero Patterson's going to have a pretty solid year. Yeah, I think we're going to have an interesting situation. I'm going to give the win to Atlanta, putting Washington at 7-5. And then they're going to travel to New York, and I think Washington gets a win in New York. I haven't seen a lot of improvement in the Giants to even give a split with them. I'm not sure. So I'm going to give the win to Washington here in MetLife, making them 8-5? Heading into the Week 14 bye. Very late bye. That's going to be interesting. But they're going to be 8-5, and then they're going to come out and at home play New York. And I think they're going to I'm going to give a split. Bookending the bye week with the same team, that's really hard to win both games. So I'm going to give the win to New York there, putting the Commanders at, 8-6, and then they travel to San Francisco. I like San Francisco if they're healthy in Levi's Stadium. San Fran gets the win. That puts Washington at 8-7, and then the Cleveland Browns at home. That's all dependent on the quarterback situation. If they have Deshaun, I think Cleveland wins. If they don't have Deshaun, I think it really comes down to the quarterback in this situation with Cleveland. So as of right now, probably a year suspension, last I knew. I don't know, though. Nobody knows with Deshaun with that whole situation. But I'm going to go with what am I at? I'm at 8-6. I'm going to go with a win over Cleveland, putting them at 9-6. And then Week 18 at home, Dallas wins, making it, what would that be? 9-8. 9-8. That might be it for me. I'm not sure. In the TikTok live conversations, I had the Commanders getting 7-9 wins, which means I landed at 8-9. This conversation, I'm looking at 9-8. So you see the right hand in hand with each other. I think for the sake of things and how I think that defense will run and what Carson can do, I'm going to give them the 9 win. I'm going to give them 8-10 wins. Again, possibly in the muddiness of the wild card fight in the NFC of the teams. But what do you guys think? I got 9-8, so 8-10 win swing. Do you think Carson can prove himself? Because again, I think this is a prove it year for Carson Wentz. Let me know what you guys think. Tell me in the comments whether you're watching this on YouTube or listen to this. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one as we continue in the NFC and we talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll see you in the next one, guys. See ya.